we'll see what happens this evening. See what apparently happens. This is a sharing from nothing that has nothing to do with Kenneth, actually. There's no Kenneth, really. There's the appearance of Kenneth, and there's an appearance of whatever your name is, and there's an appearance of all these other names and other people. And all they are is aliveness. But we don't see them as that when we feel like a separate person. We see them as other separate people. I have a life, they have a life, and we're living our lives. I live my life, you live your life. You do you, I do me. And that's the way it is. It feels really real. It's a lived reality. It's a lived sense of feeling in the body and looking out on the world and negotiating through life, then relating to other people, always in the reality of time and space. So there's moving in space and moving in time, which is just really two aspects of the same thing. And we have this sensation of lived sense of time, of moving forward towards something and having things that are behind us. And we can explore that this evening. I mean, there's all, and this is what does come up in these meetings is people. It's this illumination of that sense of being separate is actually artificial, although it feels totally real. And so any sort of many different aspects of it can come up, and people point out different things, and that that can appear to happen in this space. Say it's not a space, but in this sharing. But this sharing doesn't have any kind of goal or objective or anything. It's just simply an illumination without any agenda. And it's the illumination is that simple, very, very simple, very, very ordinary, directly, that sense you have of you speaking, sitting, you thinking, your thoughts, your life, etc., etc., you, everything, seeing, everything that's pouring through the senses, that you has never been real. It's never even started, which is totally beyond the mind. It appears to have started, and it appears to be very real. So if it never started, this is not about the end of you. It's an illumination that you're not there to begin with. So you're not even going to end. So nothing happens. When people hear this, they think, oh, well, the individual fell away for Kenneth, or the individual fell away for this other person, and then maybe the individual will fall away for me, and then I'd see wholeness. And there's an expectation that something will happen to me, and then I'll have this scene. And of course there is, because that's what the individual, that's the lived experience for the individual, is happenings, one happening after another happening. And it's living in the real, in time and space, where time and space are really causality. They're the same thing. One thing is happening, and then another, and then another, and another. So then when it comes to this, you would feel, yeah, I feel this sense of separation, and maybe one day this will, maybe through this meeting, or maybe some other time, that will fall away, and that will happen. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to you. There's no you, and there's nothing that can happen to you, because this is the illumination that what's yearned for, actually, as you feel separate, is simply energy, aliveness, which is nothing appearing to happen. This is nothing appearing to happen already. Very simple, very ordinary, directly, just simply whatever appears to be. That is totally beyond understanding. It cannot be understood. And the mind is simply a closed loop of understanding, and that understanding is a a core aspect of the separate you, the so-called you, the separate you or the individual, is living in a closed loop of your own understanding. So this is completely beyond understanding and is a resonance. It's an energetic resonance. And that resonance, it can be that that sense of separation just is no longer, and it's very obvious that there's just what's appearing to happen. Sitting on a chair, sound, a thought might arise, a sensation, whatever is seen visually, whatever, it's all just energy. It's all just appearing to happen. So we'll see what happens. Apparently, if there's a question, you can't go wrong or right with this. So it doesn't really matter. It's just there to be asked if something comes up.
Hi, Kenneth. Katerina
Hiya.
here.
Hi, Katrina. Hiya.
Hi, how are you? Um, Thanks for hosting this. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to share
Mm-hmm.
um, that on its own it happened. I've stopped struggling. I stopped. I know it's part of the narration and the story, but it's a different story than before.
Mm.
It's like the seeking has not exactly stopped, but it's not as poignant. It's
Mm.
not as desperate.
Mm.
Um, the seeking has stopped in everyday life, and it seems that I'm a bit addicted to what you're saying. I
Mm.
like to hear it. I like
Yeah, yeah.
I like to hear the message over and over.
Mm.
Even though it's the same words, even the words are the same. But
Yeah. Well, it's you see, it's really it's there's an energy to this. There's a resonance to a clear communication that's totally boundless, and it's
mm,
always new, because it speaks of what appears to be, which is always new. So it's never the same at all, actually. It's never the
yeah,
same. But as a person, it feels the same. It feels like
mm,
there's a lived sense of repetition. Um, well, Kenneth had a meeting last week and he said more or less the same thing, or I went, this happened in work, the same thing happened. I know because it's the person lives in the known. They create a sense of repetition, and the newness isn't seen then from that sense of being a separate person, from that living in the known. And there is that living in the real. So everything, it's a subject object reality. And this this newness is impossible. It can't be seen from the person. So when this resonates, this communication resonates, that sense of newness to it can be really sensed. And also it can be a really, really strong pull to it.
Yes.
A really strong pull, like you don't really want to listen to much else,
Yes. Yeah.
And that just can play out. That will just play out like it plays out. That could be a couple of weeks or a couple of years or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like,
I was I'll use the word hooked, but on a teaching before I met you, on another teaching, and I would listen to the YouTube videos all the time of this other teaching. And what was very confusing for me there was that, okay, there was no self, fine, in the logical sense, but
yeah.
it was said that there was something else there. That was the sense I am, and behind the sense I am, there was something else, and all that was very. It was again dualistic, like the self and the non-self.
Of course,
And
yeah. That's what just at the beginning you said another teaching, but because this isn't a teaching, you know that anyway. But I just
yes, yes,
always,
yes,
I
yes,
always have to
yeah,
point that
okay.
out.
Another video, another video.
Yeah, a different communication,
A
which
different
is a teaching,
communication.
because this
Okay,
is
okay.
there is nothing to teach. There's nothing to know. But yeah, I mean, that's the way it is. What you described there is pretty much the way it is. Like it's most like 99.9, just in this area of, say, let's call it non-duality, right? In this area of non-duality or Advaita Vedanta or whatever
Yeah,
you want to
yeah,
say,
yeah.
different terms. But in this area, 99.99% of the communication say there is no self, there is no individual, there's no you, there never has been. And then they'll go and talk to you that isn't there, that they just said isn't there. They'll speak to the you that isn't there, and they'll say how you can discover that you're not there, or there's how you can discover wholeness and you can rid yourself of the sense of separation through some sort of methodology of doing some sort of prescriptive path. That's
True.
pretty much it. Like, I mean, it isn't much more complicated than that. Although it's the way that it's done is way, way more diverse, and it sounds, you know what I mean? It's done many different ways, but that's essentially it, really. And then there's very few, there's very, very few where the sharing is just a sharing and illumination that doesn't speak to anyone, doesn't compromise at all in any way, shape, or form. And that one then is the one that generally people don't like, actually. Generally, obviously they don't like it. Well, how would they like it? It's just an illumination that you're artificial, you're not there. And it's in no way speaking to you or helping you in any way at all. So it's the uncompromising one tends to be much less popular, but also has the energetically is completely different.
Yes, because in the present communication, you don't offer an alternative.
No, there's no
The-
there's no,
Whereas,
like, there's not even a sense that I'm speaking to you now.
yeah,
It's all apparent. So there's no sense, there's no acknowledgement at all of an individual in this communication, only as an appearance, that's all. So when I can't see anybody, how can I talk to anybody? How can I can't, who am I going to tell to find wholeness? I'm just speaking to wholeness. All there is wholeness already. So all it can be is just an illumination, just a sharing, a suggestion. That's all. And then it's either heard or it isn't, or it's heard as it's heard, whatever way you want to put it. But it's very, very different. And generally, the one that's clear then will be, in general, very confronting as well. So it can resonate, but it'll be the one that really confronts that sense of the one who feels separate, of course, because they want it to be they want to be spoken to and fed.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what is shared here, what is shared through you is not that there is something else to
No.
there here, like a silence or a
No.
presence or nothing. There's nothing.
No. It's immediately
Yeah.
already whatever appears to be happening. That's how it appears. That's what it appears to hide. Because it's already simply whatever appears to be happening. Because this
And not in the outside.
already is wholeness. Of course it is. So there's no and that's what you're saying there is that's what generally will happen is people will start talking about some type of awareness that is some sort of special awareness that is closer to oneness or brings you into a state that allows your me to fall away or whatever other nonsense. And then people love that then. They love that because of course they do, because they've been spoken to and given something to do. And then the more complex it gets, the better. Because the more difficult it is, then the more stages and the more it can feed my sense of progressive endeavor to something that I know I'll never really reach anyway.
But it's a trap.
Of course it is. Yeah, it just feeds the individual. That's all. It's not right or wrong.
You get locked there for years, that
You can get locked there for years. Apparently you could. It also is just what's appearing to happen. So it can't be any other way either. So like it's just what appears to happen. There's a sense of there's kind of a resonance with someone who's offering something, and then that whole feedback loop begins of someone who's a teacher who knows something. I'm a student, I can get somewhere. And it just plays out. Like you said, it could last years, it could last a day, or it could last 30 years. But 30 years and a day are a story also. So there's no telling how it will, there's no telling how it would play out.
So thank you for nothing.
You are very welcome. Okay. It's the most beautiful thing. It's indescribable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I loved how this lady was saying, there's nowhere to get, because if there was somewhere to get, it would be dualistic.
Yeah.
And I like, since hearing this message, it's like you said, it's just the ordinariness, and then something seems to happen that like highlights that something has shifted. And a friend sent me a videotape of this scientist guy talking to a non-duality teacher or something like that. And so the first question she asks, or that they're supposed to ask, is, who am I? And it was like you're talking about that lived sense of being a person. It was just like light bulbs come on. You hear this guy going, oh, well, that's easy. I'm so-and-so, I have this degree, and this is what I do. It's like just immediate. This is the reality. And and hearing that, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
there's still that people or whatever, there's that strong belief in being an actual whatever, being an actual person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just amazing. Like,
Oh, and was
wow.
this from the person who was supposed to be some non-dual
No,
communicator?
no, no. This was the scientist guy. It
Oh
was just
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Of
who
course,
are
yeah.
you? And it was like immediately, well, this is me with all my degrees, and that's easy to
Oh
answer.
yeah, that's the way.
What I am.
That's the way it goes. Like, yeah, yeah. What, like, who are you? You know, show me your CV, show me your credentials,
Yes.
and also what people. It's very interesting because, um, it's very much like show prove to me you're somebody, because I don't want to waste my time with you know,
Yeah.
like show me you're somebody. And you know, oh, I studied at this university and I've got this book published and I blah blah blah, and okay, I can relax now, I'm not wasting my time because you know now. And that's the way it operates. That's the way people kind of meet each other, like, anyway, within. And it all happens, you can see it in the eyes, it all happens in nanoseconds. Like, are you
Yeah.
worth speaking to, basically? And if you're, you know, if you are, or whatever, like, where are you in terms of, like, how useful are you to me?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the way people interact. There's nothing wrong or right with it, it's just that's the way that people appear to operate. In
Yeah. Yeah.
we feel,
Yeah.
we look at someone, we get a sense of them, and we rank them in accordance with our, you know, our ideas and our concepts and our experiences and whatever, and how useful, or maybe if they're a threat, how much of a threat, or whatever, all these things. So we never see anybody,
Yeah.
actually. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Don't ever see anybody. What you meet is your idea of them. So we're
Yeah.
always just meeting our idea of other people, and same with everything, really. We're living in it's an artificial reality.
Very, yeah. It was just so clear hearing him say that. I was like, oh, wow. That's, yeah, that there's just that sense of, you know, other people being other people is very loose. And
Yeah,
to hear somebody really, you know, oh, this, like, oh, yeah, I remember feeling like this is what I am. And now,
yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And then I was walking on the trail and heard a conversation. This woman was like, talking to somebody on the phone, I'm having such trouble connecting to my spirituality.
Yeah,
Which, you know, I can
it's just
totally relate to.
gorgeous stuff, isn't
Yeah.
it? Really, like, it's so endearing, really. I know that sounds terribly patronizing, I'm
No,
aware,
but
but it
exactly.
is endearing. It's so endearing, the
Yeah.
absolute nonsense we
Yeah.
go on with, like, and it's just total and utter nonsense.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
have all of that stuff of, oh god, it's just one thing after another. Yeah. And people are fully, really, when they're in that reality, what they feel is that reality, it's fully real to them.
Yeah.
Like, that person really feels that she's having trouble connecting with her spirituality, whatever it is. And it's so obvious that it's a story. When
Yeah.
it's obvious, it's obvious, and when it isn't, it isn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
No,
I
but
mean, I can relate to being that person saying
yeah,
those
yeah,
exact same things. And now it's just
totally.
like you said. So, like, wow.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all it is then. And, like, as people, is just is it just feels, it's just blah blah blah. Then people speak at you and they say this, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Enjoyed that. I wish you luck connecting with your spirituality. I hope you get plugged in. And I hope that all works out for you then sometime. I don't know, whatever. Do you know, whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's all just a play of light anyway. So
Yeah.
then, you know, but that's the way, like, I mean, the world that people take to be real and everything, it's clearly all completely empty and total and utter nonsense. You know, when you see it as it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just stories,
Just
stories.
stories. Yeah, just gorgeous stories.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, Kenneth.
Hi, friends. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. What I can see now is that there's a kind of deepening, and it doesn't change anything. The deepening, because there's nobody, and that's kind of clear, very clear. But there is more and more. For instance, today I thought there's nobody here, but there's also nobody there.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
yeah, of course.
I can suddenly I see how big, how giant this message is,
Oh, it's totally boundless. Yeah.
and it's a kind of growing. Is it, you understand that the
Yeah. It's also nothing at all.
yeah,
It's also
yeah,
totally nothing.
yeah,
And when you say it's growing, what do you mean? For you, it's what
yeah.
exactly do you mean by that?
Now growing, yeah, growing is not a good word because it doesn't change anything.
Yeah,
The
but I mean,
clearness,
it's
yeah,
okay. It doesn't matter what the word is, but what do you mean by, is it for you? Do you mean it's getting growing, or how, what do you mean when you say that?
yeah. Hmm.
Do you know what I
More
mean?
kind of amazing. How,
For you, yeah, okay. There's a kind of
yeah,
a wonder with the message, is it?
yeah. I wonder what the
Oh,
message
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
How,
Oh, yeah,
how,
like, I mean, this, what's being said here, right? This character is completely stunned by this.
yeah, yeah,
Always, like, it's never,
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah,
never
yeah, yeah,
gets, it never gets kind of, it's very different to, it's completely, it's incomparable to knowing something. When you
yeah,
know something, it's got a very
yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
energy,
yeah,
and this
yeah.
doesn't come from knowing. So
Exactly.
there's just a sharing, and this character Kenneth is as amazed as anybody
Yeah,
at the at the at at both the communication, and it's one and the same anyway, but the
yeah,
communication and what the communication is suggesting, it's all one and the same. And but it's just completely beyond words, like, and but it's it, and totally ordinary.
yeah, yeah,
And that gorgeous, that's such a paradox to the person. It's
yeah,
beautiful because
yeah,
for the individual, like, those two things are kind of exclusive. Like,
yeah,
how can it be totally ordinary and completely
yeah,
can't be? It's either one or the other, and that's just because that the individual is that dichotomous
yeah,
play of opposites.
yeah, yeah. And Kane, is it for you so that, but it kind of, yeah, I can't use another word, developing in a way.
um no, not really developing. No, I like it, I can't say that it's developing or deepening or anything like that, really, because it just, when it comes to, like, just what it's like, say, to not be a person, I just cannot say anything really. There's nothing I can say to try and kind of capture it. the the communication then appeared to kind of get communicated more clearly from Kenneth, say, over the years.
Yeah.
But that's just what appeared to happen. It was kind of less clear, say, if you go back 10 years ago. I think the language used and everything, it just got
Yeah.
clearer maybe. But
Yeah.
it was, in essence, it was still the same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but there's just wonder.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just childlike wonder at just,
Yeah.
it's just aliveness. So
Yeah.
like, does that deepen? I can't really say it deepens, or
Yeah.
does anything
Yeah.
really.
When you say wonder, that's what I can see
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
So
an
it's so
Inloveness.
amazing. It's so big. It's so amazing.
Oh, it's beyond any idea you could have of it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the thing about it. Like
Yeah.
people have ideas about, say, wholeness, oneness, non-duality, but no,
Yeah.
unconditional love and everything. And the
Yeah.
gorgeous thing is that, like, if you don't feel like separate anymore, and there's just that, there's no sense of separation, then it's so funny the idea you would have had
Exactly.
of that. The idea is just
Yeah.
so, again, it's like what we were saying earlier, it's just endearing, it's nice, it's so funny because it's just such a concept, and
Yeah.
it can't touch this at all. It's completely
Yeah.
untouchable.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, obviously, just completely, totally ordinary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, gorgeous. Yeah, and in loveness with, I like that term, that kind of way of describing it, like just an in loveness with what appears to be happening.
Yeah.
Um,
Whatever it is. Yeah.
whatever that is, yeah, and then and that what appears to be happening can be painful and uncomfortable,
Even that. Yeah.
and that's just what appears to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so clear that there's nothing here that wants something else than what is.
Yeah, yeah,
So
because
what
what,
is
yeah,
what is. It's
what, yeah,
there's
yeah,
nothing wants to change that.
yeah, because the thing that wanted to change it was the artificial in sense of being an individual that was only an appearance anyway. So if that
Yeah.
apparently collapses, there just is nothing there to want to change anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not there anymore. So
Yeah.
so when that sense of separation isn't appearing, it can be quite obvious that it never even really was real. It was just an appearance, but
Yeah.
it was that that gave rise to a real sense, a lived sense of being real, and then a closed loop of knowing, of protecting that sense of
Yeah.
separateness by pushing away discomfort and pulling away pain,
Yeah.
and continually kind of working on a model of what life should be,
Yeah.
and kind of rejecting a lot of what appears to be happening because it's not
Yeah.
really fitting into that model,
Yeah.
and accepting some of it and whatever. And this is the dualism, this is the agitation, really,
Hmm.
of feeling separate. It's this constant agitation,
Yeah.
that some people aren't aware of at all. They don't. There's no sensitivity even to it.
Hmm.
And
No.
then when the others, it becomes very obvious, and there's a huge sensitivity to this something. I suppose something missing is what you would say. Really, there's something
Yeah.
missing. I
Yeah.
can't put my finger on it, but
Yeah.
and people just feel that maybe it's not actually to do with an experience,
Hmm.
and once they've tried all these states as well, they can kind of get a sense maybe it's not to do with a state either.
Hmm.
And then sometimes then they hear a communication like this, and it
Yeah.
just boom, it's
Yeah.
so funny, it can just resonate very quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, everyone is already this.
Yeah.
Everyone is
Yeah.
already just energy,
Yeah.
nothing being everything. completely, totally and utterly. That's all they are.
Mm.
But then overlaying that may be a sense of separation.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Mm. Thank you.
Thanks, friends.
Hi, Kenneth.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
I've never spoken with you before.
Ah,
I just was on a walk right before this, and I had to have a chuckle when it occurred to me that I thought that you were somebody that had something that I was going to go listen to, that you were going to be you. Inside the you is this emptiness that I want. And
yeah,
then I realized that the thinker that I think I am, and the seer that I think I am, and the hearer, they're all objects, ideas, and thoughts and labels,
yeah,
and couldn't possibly exist because then there would be little avatars or characters
yeah.
floating around separate from what is. And it just, the whole absurdity of it kind of clicked. It was like,
Ah,
whoa.
lovely.
But, there's something that it still is confusion.
Yeah,
For years, for 7 years, I worked for a very prominent non-dual teacher who I won't mention. I
yeah.
did all his videos. I did most of his retreats, helped with the website. And he talks about awareness, being aware of itself. And I got very much the feeling, what some people call the awareness trap, that awareness was something and I was something else.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I got the feeling that all the objects that I perceive, that are perceived in the view, are occurring in me as the field of boundless energy. So there was still a duality, a subtle
course, yeah.
duality that remained through all of this. And I wanted to see what you have to say about that, because that's where his teaching left me.
Oh, yeah, because the first clue is that he's a teacher. So if it's a lady or a gentleman who's a teacher, that's the first thing. Because there's nothing to teach. There's nothing to teach. There is nothing to, once it's a teaching, then it's nonsense, total nonsense. I've never, ever, ever, ever said I was a teacher. I was very clear from the very beginning that I am not a teacher. and that this is about something that is completely beyond the mind, that cannot be taught because it cannot be known. There's nobody to teach and there's nothing to know. So once it's framed in that way of a non-dual teacher, like it's a misnomer, it's nonsense. There's no such thing as a non-dual teacher, and there's no such thing as non-duality actually either, really. Like what falls under non-duality is just 99.9% nonsense. So what you'll find then is that, like, obviously this stuff that offers something is going to be much, much, much more popular, because of course it is, because we apparently live in a world of separate people. The people experience and feel that they're separate, so they're very much drawn to any kind of communication that is a teaching, because they live in a loop of knowing and they want to know to get somewhere. So that is therefore why all of these teachings are very popular. Most of them go in for awareness, consciousness, on to some level or degree. They'll go into awareness and consciousness, and it's such it's a very endearing little trap.
But I heard you say that awareness or consciousness is a quality or is something to do with thinking. It's the thinking, it's the substrate, or it's connected to
what I was going to say about awareness or consciousness is it's simply knowing. That's all it is. It's totally irrelevant. Completely, totally, and utterly irrelevant.
Well, how could you have knowing without a knower?
Well, knowing is simply an aspect of feeling like an individual. So
right,
therefore,
exactly.
the awareness that we think, we feel as individuals that awareness is somehow the key to something. It really feels, and let's just to be clear now about awareness and consciousness are the same thing, but they're used sometimes a little bit, the words are used differently, but they're talking about the same thing. And essentially what they're talking about is knowing. And knowing is directly from a sense of feeling separate. So once I feel separate, I can know what I feel separate from. In that space, I can abstract a sense of knowing from it. And that is all the individual.
Know thyself. His favorite book was Know Thyself. Ibn Arabi.
Yeah, but it's all nonsense, though. It's all nonsense, because, and that's why it's all like all of these so-called teachers, they will go in for all of this stuff about awareness and so, and people are attracted to it. They feel there's something in it, and the whole thing just appears to go around and around and around, and all it does is feed the individual. Like as we said in the beginning,
this deep sleep, awareness without objects, blah 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 blah. That
well, it's all blah blah blah. It's all blah blah blah. Like it's all just nonsense. All of it is nonsense, and all it does is feed the sense of being an individual. That's why the individual loves all that stuff. It's totally sensed that it's of no danger to the individual at all. Far from it. It feeds the individual. It gives the I something to do and just keep going around and around. It's great. And it's nonsense. It's total nonsense.
And then there's another teacher I encountered recently that talked to me about the fear barrier, like where what was to do was to meet the fear of one's own disappearance by sitting simply in what is, like without
and who's going
without
to do
labeling, without judging, right? So it's a practice.
That sounds lovely. Sounds lovely.
Me.
Yeah,
but then this terror comes up, which it did after a few, maybe 3 minutes of no thought.
Yeah.
Terror. Then the practice was just to notice and relax. And you do talk about how terrifying this is to the me, like to this communication that you have is
confronting
like
to the individual.
It's confronting to the individual, like the fear of death is, right? So
well, your fear of your absence, but the difference is, just to be clear, you just described someone who's a teacher who is speaking to an individual, and prescribing something that they should do to discover that they're not an individual. You've never heard anything remotely anyway close to that out of my mouth. And if you have, then you haven't been, it's been,
Well, I haven't listened to you for very long, but I take you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just clarifying the difference. You see, there's a like there is no teachers. There is no such thing as a teacher. The vast majority of what comes under non-duality is not non-duality, really. It's just something that speaks to an individual. So it's nonsense. There's only very, very few clear, uncompromising communications which are simply sharing that don't offer anything to anybody, and they tend to not be very popular, and they have a different energy to them because they're not speaking to anybody. So